So tell me if you've heard this one before. A guy with a super annoying wife, let's call him Rip Van Winkle, accepts some questionable spirits from some guy he meets in the woods. Good stuff, but it's definitely a sleep inducer. Rip, what a cool name. I mean, like with a name like Rip, only, Bruce Willis or The Rock can play him in a live action movie, right? So Rip wakes up 20 years later. Wow, that's really sleeping one off. And Rip finds a very different world. He went nighty-night when there was a colonial America and a 15-year-old Louis XVI who had just married a really annoying and kind of mouthy Marie Antoinette. The alarm goes off and Rip is introduced to the United States of America and a French Republic after some guy named Napoleon Bonaparte. If Rip had been slightly more ambitious with his drinking and hit the snooze button a couple of decades more, he would have found some countries called Italy and Germany, which were not things before the snooze fest. So the first thing popping into Rip's mind is, how is it possible that millions of people are governing themselves? He remembers from his class on philosophy that according to people like Aristotle, the city-state was as big as any republic could get. Well, Rip, that's a great question. And it points to the problem of human scale. I mean, how do city-states successfully become big and powerful nations? Let's talk Italy, mainly because, well, I like Italy. How did they unify into one nation under a single flag and ruler? So there were these five guys, and they met up in Cafe Alighieri near the Ponte alla Stoli. Okay, that was not it. That's not how it happened. In Italy, in 1300, there were over 200 self-governing centers, mostly city-states like Florence and Arezzo. When Rip went to sleep, there were still dozens of different kingdoms. There was the Duchy of Milan, the Parma, Tuscany, the Kingdom of Naples, the Papal States. Now, lest we forget, they did have a history of unification. Remember Rome, like 1,500 years before Rip? Since then, no unification. This is very different from, say, France, which has been generally thought of as a single unit, a single people since, well, Charlemagne. The idea of a unified nation in Italy was not a concept until Mr. Napoleon Bonaparte conquered most of the Italian peninsula. It was only under the freedom of the French Revolution that those five intellectuals could conceive of one Italy. And it was just those five intellectuals. You see, the unification of Italy was not a thing because of some serious challenges. First of all, geography. Italy is a boot with a mountain range down the middle. There are the Alps. There's the big islands like Sardinia and Sicily. Given the terrible roads and the fact that there are no river systems connecting the major population centers, travel was really unpleasant. Now, by comparison, Germany has the Rhine, the Weser, the Elbe, the Main. And you have, in Italy, a terribly uneducated rural population that's barely surviving and frankly did not care about being Italian. Some studies have estimated that literacy rate among the northern colonies in the colonial America was 98%. In Italy, that was more like the illiteracy rate. Finally, you had Austria, the papacy, the French monarchy, Spain, and Britain all working to keep Italy in pieces because they were all about trading little pieces of the boot to keep the balance in Europe. Attitude in Italy didn't help. People in Florence considered themselves Florentine. People in Milan were Milanese. People in Sicily were Mafia. Kidding. I'm just kidding. They were Sicilians, but they weren't Italian. After Mr. Bonaparte and the revolution in France blew up the whole balance thing in Europe, people did start talking about a unified Italy. There was these little secret groups like the Carbonari all over the place. These people were quickly hunted down, however, and shot by the Austrians, who had a major stake in the Italian holdings and were not keen on a unified Italy. Pockets of rebellion did start popping up. There were the insurrections in Sicily and Piedmont in 1820 and 1821. There was the July Revolution in 1830 in Modena and the 5 Days in Milan. Nothing really stuck until 1848 when a series of revolutions led to the First Italian War of Independence. That didn't stick long either. In 1859, there was a second Italian War of Independence that allowed Piedmont to take some Austrian land, but it was in 1860 there were still 5 nations in Italy. Austria and Venetia, the Papal States, the Kingdom of Piedmont and Sardinia, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and San Marino. No unification. Now, what was missing? Che Guevara. I know what you're thinking. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a personality. Che, he was a revolutionary. He had personality, right? He and the Castro brothers snagged Cuba. Then the Castros were all like, hey, Che, good to see you. Hey, but we don't need you here now. Go to, Bolivia. They'll love you there, and you can stir up all kinds of problems. Well, in Italy, you had Giuseppe Garibaldi. Garibaldi, who was from Nice, stirred up plenty of Italian problems and he got exiled. So he went to Brazil, became a famous revolutionary bandit, then came home and stirred up more problems. Now, the king of Piedmont, Victor Emmanuel, like the Castros, needed Garibaldi to go away. So he gave Garibaldi 1,000 guys and suggested not Bolivia, but Sicily. I mean, really, 1,000 guys and a slogan, I claim Italy for Victor Emmanuel. Well, 1,000 guys against 100,000 people from the two Sicilies, they were going to make short work of that troublemaker. And yet history, and Garibaldi, has given us the expedition of the 1,000. From its humble beginnings on the west coast of Sicily, the 1,000, led by the uber-charismatic Garibaldi, marched east, added thousands of Sicilians who thought this guy was all that, and proceeded to take Sicily. No biggie. I mean, Napoleon Bonaparte had nothing on Garibaldi. By the time Garibaldi jumped the straits and headed for Naples, Victor Emmanuel was like, oh, dude, I got to get to Naples to meet this guy. Short version, Garibaldi claimed Italy for Victor Emmanuel, and then, after meeting the king and shaking hands with him and handing over the keys to that really fantastic little army, he retired. That guy was so cool. Now, there was still some cleanup to do with the papacy in Venice and such, but the bottom line is on March 17, 1861, Italy was unified under Victor Emmanuel. And that, Rip, is how you do it. So, what do we learn? There were so many consequential revolutions all over the West in the 18th and 19th centuries, but it's really hard to show common themes. In America, you had a people dedicated to individualism that booted a king in a few years. In France, you had a king that was booted, unbooted, and then beheaded. And the collective, they pointed at you and called you an individualist. Your head was going to go with the join the kings. Germany had always sort of, kind of been unified under the Holy Roman Empire, so there was that. In Italy, the unification took 60 years. That's like 2 naps for Rip. Sure, the countries were unified, but there was never a single path, no formula. To go from mini small to big one, you have to take measure of the many, and you have to create a unique history.